Warning, the following video is labeled top secret and classified. All unauthorized viewing is strictly prohibited. Any non-subscribers will be flagged as the fallen. Violators will be tracked, located, and detained. You have been warned. Welcome to the War Academy, because the more you learn, the less you lose. You might be asking yourself, with the Dark Angel nerf, what's the meta? And I'll say, I don't know. What's the meta with you? In this video, we're going to go over 4 Dark Angel archetypes that take advantage of ancient, forgotten techniques. Because, let's face it, if you're nothing without your inner circle, then you didn't deserve it in the first place. A lion still has claws, so let's go over how do we construct a Dark Angel list in Arcs of Omen without our permanent transhuman. All right, to start off, let's go over what's the first thing you do when you build a list. If you said, choose your secondaries, then you're correct. So for this Dark Angel list, I've selected 3 secondaries, and I'm going to be going for Oaths of the Moment, Stubborn Defiance, and Warp Ritual. If it just so happens that I can do something like No Prisoners, Assassinate, Bring It Down, or Raise Banners, I'll probably do that instead. But these 3 are ones that I'm always going to be able to take no matter who I'm up against. So to knock 2 of these off the list right off the bat, we can get Oaths of the Moment by being within the center, and we can get our Ritual with Ezekiel here. Now to get our Stubborn Defiance, we've added some Infiltrators. So if you've played Dark Angels, you're probably pretty familiar that Infiltrators or Incursors are amazing for getting you that Stubborn Defiance. So unlike most armies, I can theoretically score well with just this in my army. But there's other things to consider, and that's how are we going to hold objectives. When you play 40k, there'll almost always be 3 objectives-ish that you're going to be contesting over. In order to score more than your opponent, you're going to need to hold your home. You're going to need to hold 2 that are outside of your home. That should get you a really good scoring primary. The other one we don't need to worry about. A big way people lose the game is they spread their army too thin, trying to take every objective instead of just the ones that they need. So now that transhuman is gone, what do we have to hold objectives? And that's kind of what we're going to be experimenting with here. So to hold objective A, I will be adding 10 Deathwing Terminators. And I know their transhuman is gone, but if we look at these guys in a little bit of a vacuum here, let's compare them to other armies Terminators. They're still the best ones. If you want a Thunder Hammer Storm Shield with other Terminators, you cannot take a Cyclone Missile Launcher. We get both of those, which makes us significantly better. We also have a lot better, like a lot of good buffs that you can put on to make these guys really hammer things. We also get our little Watcher in the Dark. Overall, our Terminators are still arguably the best Terminators in the game. So these guys will hold objective A. And just like you, I really miss transhuman, so we're going to fix that a little bit. And we're going to bring my favorite unit in Dark Angels. You never leave home without the Dark Shroud. The Dark Shroud's amazing. If you haven't been using it, use it. So what this guy's going to do is, to shooting, he's basically going to give them transhuman to hit. So now these guys will be -1 to hit. Most things in the game will hit on 3s, and it's going to bring it to 4s. But it's better than transhuman to hit because things like Orcs will go from 5s to 6s, or things like Tau and Guard will go from 4s to 5s. And next I'm going to need to hold objective B, because that's probably going to be where these Infiltrators will go and start out on, and they'll start on the one that I know I can hold the best to make sure I get the Stubborn Defiance. So to switch it up a little bit, I'm adding 5 Aggressors. Aggressors we have the best Aggressors as Dark Angels. These things are awesome now. They lowered them to 30 points per model. They're toughness 5. The big thing that makes these guys so good with Dark Angels is that we can shoot in melee. So for being a Dark Angel, as long as you're in the Tactical Doctrine, these guys will be able to shoot their guns in melee on 4s. It's supposed to be on 5s, but anytime you do that, you'll have not moved that turn, meaning it's going to be 4s. So also, these guys are going to be dealing with things that are going to be higher strength. I can transhuman these guys. They have 3 wounds. I can effectively make them very similar to the Terminators before, with just a little bit lower armor save. So since these guys are toughness 5 and these guys are toughness 4, like, I don't know if I really want Ezekiel to be the one that has to constantly cast Warp Ritual, because his spells are too good. With things like Righteous Repugnance or turning off Obsec, Fight Last, like, he's too precious to me to be able to waste on Warp Ritual. And that's why I'm going to add a normal plain Librarian. This is something I've been doing for a while. It's cheap. He can do Warp Ritual. Since he only needs to do Warp Ritual 3 times, I'll have other spells I can cast with him, which is going to include the main one that I love for him is +1 strength, +1 toughness, +1 attack. That's going to bring these aggressors to toughness 6 if I want to, with buckets of attacks because they're dual wielding power fists. Or I can even make my Deathwing toughness 5, and there's going to be situations where just being toughness 5 is going to really offset the fact that they don't have permanent transhuman anymore. So now I'm pretty happy with my ability to hold objectives, like considering the amount of points I have here. So I think I'm ready to add some things to take away my opponent's ability to score. Now, it used to be attack bikes that I was obsessed with, and I loved Hell Blasters, but honestly, these are the best shooting units that we have access to with Dark Angels. We have Eradicators with the assault gun, so I don't have to worry about them. They can just pop out, do their Eradicator thing. Then we have the new Devastators, which they don't have a model that I could find, so I'm using these guys. Desolators. These guys have the crazy missile launchers, and Dark Angels just have by far the best ones because we can get +1 to hit when we don't move. I plan on having these guys pop out of a ruin. I'll probably use Steady Advance on them, and then that's going to make them hit on 2s instead of 4s. And then because they're so cheap now, I brought a squad of Devastators at 115 points. So these guys will A, trade really well. B, they have the grav cannons, so 3 of them have grav cannons. 1 has a heavy bolter. I love putting the 1 heavy bolter on here. That lets me use Hellfire rounds, so if I go up against an enemy monsters like Bloodthirsters, Hive Tyrants, what have you, I can just smack it for 3 mortal wounds for 1 CP, which is very efficient, or do D3 mortal wounds to something that I might be having trouble digging out. So altogether, I've got my secondaries covered, I'm holding primary okay, and I've got my long-range support. So now I want to go back. I'm pretty confident with my ability to kill it ranged and melee, so I want to focus more on my ability to hold these points. Now, because I am planning on keeping these Deathwing as a solid squad of 10, which I don't normally recommend to do, but this list is going to buff them, like if I get them to toughness 5 and things. So I'm going to bring in the Deathwing Ancient, and I am going to give him the banner that gives these Deathwing -1 damage, and that's just going to make them very, very hard to bring down, and that's going to hold the point very well. Now, to help out these aggressors, I decided to bring 3 more aggressors. So when they get to the point, these aggressors will hopefully be able to push forward and not stay on the objective, so they'll be able to go off on their own adventure, while these 3 can hold the point for them. So because I do plan on spending a lot of CP here with steady advances, transhuman on these guys, and what have you, I probably need some extra CP, and anytime you see this much green armor, there's a clear character that we need to bring along, and that's Mr. Azrael. So he'll be given a 4-up invuln to my guns if I need the guns, or to these aggressors if there's guns pointed at them. Overall, he's just going to keep things alive. He'll be able to do the rerolls. He can give the ranged guys reroll hits and then move with the aggressors to keep reroll 1s on them. Lots of versatility. He is expensive, but the extra CP, everything, it makes it worth it. So far with this list, I'm actually noticing because I have Brilliant Strategist on Azrael here to get the CP, means I can rewind Doctrines. That also, with all these hammers in melee, I do have a list that could probably pull off Codex Warfare, because I can rewind to Devastator Doctrines while I'm in Tactical. Once I finish that off, move on to Assault, so that way these guys can punch things and rewind on Tactical things to finish it off. So I do have a lot of hard-hitting weapons in this army. So there's definitely a unit that we need to add. The Talon Master, just because he's amazing. We'll give him the Arbiter's Gaze. He'll probably also take the Warlord trait to give OBSEC, so that way we can have OBSEC Terminators or OBSEC Aggressors, depending on who needs it. And he's fast enough that he'll be able to get there. I like to use this guy where I position him like next to the unit that I think is going to get charged, so that way I can possibly overwatch with that Arbiter's Gaze. It's very strong. This list is holding Objective A, Objective B very, very well, with the heavy support that can easily hold my home objective. But I don't just want to give Objective C to my opponent, I at least want to harass him with something. But to finish off this list, I'm going to put in a squad of 5 Deathwing Terminators, kitted the same way. So these guys will probably just go off on a little solo adventure to Objective C to threaten it, to beat up whatever my opponent decides to put on there, so he'll actually have to spend points defending it, and that's points that won't be attacking my Objective A or my Objective B. And I'll be deciding on who goes where based on the AP values and damage dealt of my opponent and what he looks like he's sending to those same objectives. Altogether, this list comes out to exactly 2,000 points. Next up here, we got a list you guys have been asking me a while for. I call it That's So Ravenwing. The other thing I kind of want to call it, did you guys know a flock of crows is called a murder of crows, but a flock of ravens is called an unkindness. So here is an unkindness of Dark Angels. So before you guys go out and buy a bunch of Ravenwing, I just want to say the only thing that you get for being pure Ravenwing is to give OBSEC to these bikes. And arguably, I could drop all the OBSEC bikes out of this list, replace them with heavy intercessors, and basically do the same thing, but get access to a lot more of the codex. But this is more fun. It's Ravenwing. So the 3 safe secondaries that I've chosen for this list is going to be Oaths of the Moment, and then it's going to be Shock Tactics. So Shock Tactics is basically taking objectives from your opponent, and I'll explain why that's important in a second. But lastly is the problem with Ravenwing is they don't gain access to psychers. There's no psychers on bikes. But to get around that, we brought Mr. Cotiaz, and this guy is amazing. So not only do you have this guy have like chunky boy armor and a big fuck off hammer, but he's got this thing called spy networks where once per game I can make one of my opponent's CP cost 1 more. So most of likely I'm going to use this the first time my opponent interrupts. Pretty much every game someone's going to try to interrupt combat. I'm going to make it cost 3 CP, or I'm going to wait till he's just at 1 CP and he'll know that he's really at 0 CP. On top of that, this guy also has a spell that I can give a 5-up invuln to any bikers. So now, even though I can't take Azrael, I can at least still get a 5-up invuln on some of my bikes that maybe didn't jink or something. And I'll be able to use that invuln in melee, which is the main thing. And then, of course, he'll be mainly here to do his warp ritual, plus that little CP thing. He's cheap. He does his job really well. Now, to look at the rest of the list, we got how am I going to hold those objectives? So, to split it up, I basically have a unit of outright, 2 units of outriders, 1 to go to each objective. Outriders just went down in points, and they're now back to what they were when they were overpowered when Indominus box set came out. The thing to be careful of when you use these guys is they are very hard to hide. They have these big fat bases, which means when you hide them behind ruins, they tend to take up a lot of space. So depending on what army I'm fighting, I do most likely plan on putting at least one of these guys into reserve. Because the thing that ends up happening when you play this army is you don't play Ravenwing like a conventional 40k army. This is a lot more like playing a hunter in World of Warcraft. It's kite, 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 kite. You never fire one of your guns unless it's 1 inch less than its max range. If someone moves 6 inches closer to you, then you move 7 inches away from them. What'll end up happening if you really stick to this plan is by every game I've played so far, my opponent ended up in my deployment zone and I'm fully in his because he moves towards me, I move away. I just don't let yourself get cornered. But if you do get cornered, at least it means he's off the objective. Because this list has such bad melee, but such good amount of guns, the trick to winning with this list is going to be like to move right up to your onto an objective while your opponent's still on it. Then you're going to shoot him with everything that you know you need to take him off the objective, just enough, and then continue to fire at the rest of his army. But you're shooting him off the objectives that you're already on and basically taking it from him, and then you're going to leave when he starts coming towards you and do that to a different one. So to hold each objective, like I mentioned, we're going to have outriders. These guys are OBSEC, and then I also brought a squad of bikes. I'm not sure if it's an error in Battlescribe, but Battlescribe is telling me that a attack bike attached to a bike squad is only 30 points, and then it's 10 points to upgrade him to a multi-melta. As far as the kit for the rest of the guys, we got one normal dude with a chainsword. Then we got this guy with, all they have is a plasma gun, but he's got a melta gun, and this guy's got a combi melta. So basically it's like 2 multi-meltas in this little thing here, but it's got extra wounds because of the attack bike, and it's got OBSEC. So similar to Genestealer, Cult, and Votan, I'll be taking most of the damage on this 4-wound bike, and then I'm trying to resurrect that with the Apothecary, because you get a lot of value if you keep resurrecting attack bikes with the Apothecary, because the Apothecary is not very good anymore. He can't resurrect enough stuff to actually make him worth his points in most armies. It's nice to bring back a model in like clutch places, but he's got to bring back 5 Terminators to get his point cost back. And with some of the lists, it's just, yeah, it's not worth taking an Apothecary really, except in Ravenwing lists right now, in my opinion, or if you're at least resurrecting 40+ point models. I don't want to be caught fighting on the points because I can't use cover. I don't want to like get stuck in. There is stratagems that let you attack the opponent and then run away before they can attack you back. I'll probably do stuff like that. But I did bring a lot of the Black Knights here. I did do this wrong. Sorry. This is going to be over here. It looks like this. A squad of 5, a squad of 3, and then the big squad. So the big squad will most likely be in reserve. And I'll bring them out somewhere near Samuel so I can get them re-rolling ones. And then I'll probably Weapons of a Dark Age them when they come in. And that should hurt something pretty bad if I overcharge them. So the hardest part about making a Raven Wing army, in my opinion, is actually using up your slots. The way I'd rather build a Raven Wing army, I'm out of slots at like 1,700 points. So that's why it's important to recruit from Agents of Imperium. If you're either using the Jakara Weaponsmith is the cheapest one to bring. I love this Kotiez guy for Warp Ritual. Otherwise, even an Assassin can fill in some slots. For the rest of the army, we also have the attack bikes because attack bikes are awesome. The Dark Shroud because you never leave home without it. The Talon Master because he's the Talon Master. Samuel sucks. I hate this model, but he's not very good for his point cost, but he'll be fine. He gives rerolls, which I really, really need, and he's at least better than a captain on a bike. But finally, we have the Nephilim Jet Fighters. If you guys have used these before, they are insane. The fact that we have to put flyers in reserve has actually made these things even better. So with being able to have a 4-up invuln through Jink for the CV, you can give them, they have the natural -1 to hit. These things shoot out so much heavy bolter shots. They come in your deployment zone, sit there and just absolutely annihilate things. They're very hard to interact with how fast this army is. Nephilim Jet Fighters, these have been, every time I played this army, it's the two Nephilim Jet Fighters that have been the MVPs. Yeah, the key to this army is just keeping your distance. Don't ever fire melta-guns like within their half range because it probably means you're going to die. Very fun, high skill, high reward army. This comes out to exactly 2,000 points, and just about everything in this list has gone down in points. So it's to field this list before the Arcs of Omen, this would have been probably near 2,300 points. So it's really nice to see that there might be some life in Raven Wing. Again, you're not getting a lot for being Raven Wing other than this awesome rule of cool. All right, next up, we have something to show you. Stubborn Defiance isn't the only thing that you need. We do have other options, and this is a crazy MSU. So there are 21 units in this army. You couldn't really do this before, but with all these new point reductions, the amount of MSU, which is minimum squad units, you can is just insane. MSU is always super powerful, and the reason is that every single thing in this list costs basically under 100 points. These aggressors are only 90 points. These 2-man Terminator squads are only 70 points. And instead of going for Stubborn Defiance, I'm going to be going for behind enemy lines. And the point of this army is just you can't trade with it. It's the amount of points it's going to take you to kill my 90-point squad of aggressors is more than 90 points. The amount of effort it's going to take to kill these 70-point... Leave in the comments if you know something that costs 70 points or less that can kill 2 Deathwing Terminators. All the points are in the HQs, but you can't interact with the HQs. So to go over this list, how I'm doing it, obviously you see I'm breaking the rule of 3 here, but these are squads of 6 aggressors that I'm going to be combat squatting. Only one of them out of each 6 is going to be a sergeant, but that's a lot of freaking aggressors. Each one is its own squad of 3, capable of doing its own thing. I'm trying to get my opponent to split his attacks. If you guys watch battle reports or just see people do splitting your attacks, never works. Anytime you can get your opponent to do that, it always works in your favor. And that's because anytime you give your opponent more decisions to make, it vastly increases the chance that he's going to pick the wrong one. So to hold these points, we got aggressors, 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 aggressors. That should hold the points pretty well. Then because I want to focus on that trade, but I do want to give OBSEC, I'll have the Talon Master with his Rights of War, so he'll be able to give OBSEC to some of the aggressors. And then I also have just regular old Assault Intercessors. Nobody cares about shooting your Assault Intercessors. They're probably the lowest priority target thing in this entire list because they suck. I'm going to use that to my advantage by putting these near the aggressors. Because if you have a troop near a guy that's not a troop, you basically give them OBSEC. So if he's on the objective, he's going to turn off the OBSEC of my opponent, making it go straight to model count. That's the exact same thing as if my aggressors had OBSEC. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. It's the only time I'd ever say assault intercessors are the best troop to use, because I don't need stubborn defiance. I'm going to be doing behind enemy lines. To do that, we're going to be deep striking these 2 Terminators. Then we're going to be deep striking these 2 Terminators. We're going to be deep striking these 2 Terminators. On top of that, I really want to make sure I have this, and I possibly want to use 4 of these Terminators to really harass my opponent, maybe charge a tank or something and just tie it up all game. So I'm bringing this other unit that I think is absolute garbage, but he's really good in this list, and that's the Deathwing Champion. Why is he here? Because he is the exact same point cost as these 2 guys. So if I drop this behind my opponent's deployment zone, which is small enough that it's very easy to fit, I might be able to get this guy here too, and these have bodyguard keyword. So now this right here is 2 units in your deployment zone getting me behind enemy lines. What I want my opponent to do is I want him to send something back off of the front to go deal with these, because I'm going to win that trade. He'll probably have to send 140 points just to deal with 2 of these, let alone to get this guy too. If he somehow manages to pull that off, I have more of them. It's going to be awesome. It's behind enemy lines is all but guaranteed with these 4 units capable of doing it. And then just like before we saw, this is what my favorite heavy support combo is. And that is, I'm sorry, this isn't. This is 2 Devastators. I'm missing the Desolators, but I couldn't afford them in this list. I have 2 squads of the Devastators, Grav Cannons, the other one, Devastators, Grav Cannons, and then the squad of Eradicators. I also have 1 squad of 1 attack bike and 1 squad of 1 attack bike. And again, the Dark Shroud, this is a trade list, so I want my opponent to waste effort killing very little things. So I'm going to give those little things -1 to hit on top of that. So hopefully he'll end up just going for the Dark Shroud. When people go for the Dark Shroud, they don't realize how hard it is to actually kill. And by the time they kill it, I don't need it anymore. Just like before, we're using 2 of the Librarians. Ezekiel's going to go do his awesome Ezekiel stuff. This guy's here to give the +1 attack, +1 strength, +1 toughness to the aggressors or whatever have you that needs it. We got the Talonmaster because he's awesome. And Azrael will giving all these aggressors, like right here, if you were standing there, like look at all the aggressors that have a 4-up invuln save right now. And a 4-up invuln on aggressors that don't have that's just, oh my god, this is gonna be such a pain in the ass to kill. So many shots. We got anti-infantry up the ass. We got big ass hammers to deal with you in melee, huge ass Devastator guns to deal with you at range. Talonmaster just deletes whatever he shoots at most of the time. And yeah, the attack bike's just harassing you. There's very little wasted points. Azrael's pretty expensive, but you won't be able to target him. Like any of the characters shouldn't be targeted at all. And yeah, that's the MSU list. I love this list. It takes advantage of just the core mechanics of the game to win. And don't forget, these guys shoot into melee, the aggressors. So aggressors, when they're in tactical doctrine, they'll be able to fire those guns into melee, and the other aggressors can't do that. Other aggressors can't get a 4-up invuln. Other aggressors can't, stand still and hit on 2s or move and use steady advance to hit on 2s. Like, these guys are awesome. But what about all those Terminators that you bought? They got to be useful, right?
I didn't hear no bell.
I think you still have a lot of play. So if we look again at what makes the Terminator so good, this unit breaks that. Nobody can take as much Terminator armor as Deathwing. On top of that, the biggest thing that kills Terminators is things that do mortal wounds. And we have Lazarus. Lazarus is going to give us that juicy feel no pain 2 mortal wounds. Now each one of these Terminators should be combat squatted. There's not much reason at all to use them any as a squad of 10. You're going to get more use out of them just having a bunch of 5-mans running around. So this is the maxed out good Terminators that you can take. Then we have to pretend that we're normal Space Marines, and we have to take these regular Terminators. So normally to get a Cyclone missile launcher, you're going to have a Stormbolter and a Chain Fist. And that's what these guys will have. So they'll hold my home objective most likely. This guy could go. He's the one thing I'm a little bit on the fence about, and that's the -1 damage. It seems like it would be good in this list to give a Terminator unit -1, but realistically, if you give one -1 damage to, say, these guys, then your opponent just goes for those instead. But he is here. Give him -1 damage to make setups. It does have its play. The Deathwing Apothecary. This is not supposed to be here. This is supposed to be a Ravenwing Apothecary. So the Ravenwing Apothecary does have Inner Circle keyword, so he won't break the OBSEC on these Deathwing Terminators. Oh yeah, did I mention that? Nobody else has OBSEC Terminators, but we do. These two guys are the same points, but it's just so much easier to get a Raven Wing Apothecary around than it is this guy around. So Deathwing is Raven Wing for now. To go over the rest of this list, we have Ezekiel and a Librarian, because these guys also have Inner Circle keyword. So Ezekiel doing Ezekiel stuff, Librarian doing the same thing as before. The Talon Master also has Inner Circle keyword, so he will be here to give reroll ones to wound and just a much needed DACA to this army that's DACA's pretty much all missile launchers. For the leftover points, I have 2 squads of the veterans, the 2-man units. So these are just here to basically function as a small unit to get things stuck in combat, harass, force multiplier, that kind of thing. Also, they can protect, they have character protection, which may start to help. This list doesn't have infiltrators. Most of the time, I probably will be using these guys to do behind enemy lines, since they do it so well. And that's what this guy could be dropped out for, is 2 more of these guys. So altogether, this is pretty self-explanatory, but these guys here will go to objective A. These guys here will go to objective B. These guys will harass objective C. These will score behind enemy lines. These will bring back Terminators wherever my opponent doesn't want me to bring back Terminators. This guy will give me the rerolls plus the feel no pain to mortals. This guy will give me the reroll ones. This guy will be scoring my warp ritual. And Ezekiel will be doing Ezekiel things, mainly do things like turning off OPSEC on my opponent, because if I turn off his OPSEC, even 1 Terminator is going to take that point from him. And there you have it. There's 4 ways that you can play Dark Angels and score incredible amounts of points that even if you play them badly, you'll still probably play them pretty well. So I hope you like part 1 of the new video series called What's the Meta with You, where we'll be going in detail how to make each archetype for each army. Leave a comment on what army archetypes you want to see me do next, or just leave a comment saying for the lion if you think I should just keep making Dark Angel videos.
Do it.
Before we go, I want to show you guys who the real Inner Circle is. My channel, you guys wouldn't have it in this video if it wasn't for these guys right here. And remember, don't mess with bad juju when you play a dice game. If you watch this far, make sure you subscribe. You'll be doing me a favor. And in theory, that just means you should roll better. If you don't subscribe, your dice will roll like shit. Imagine how good your dice will roll if you sign up for my Patreon.
Do it.
And if you need more learning, make sure you stop by our Discord. The War Academy Discord is here to help you with anything 40K. We can help you if you're an advanced player or a new player. This is the Discord to go to get ideas for just about anything. We do tabletop simulator tournaments that have been just a blast. We do raffles, do offer very cheap coaching if anybody needs help on making their army as deadly as it can be. And remember, for dice's sake, subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Whee!
Bye, have a great time.